Hello. You are listening to The X-Files by Trevor Shelby. Copyright Trevor Shelby. Make sure to subscribe, and when we get new episodes, you'll be the first to know.
Chapter 3. The Breaking Point. The fluorescent lights at Wegmans felt like needles in my retinas. 6:30 a.m. on a Wednesday, and I was pushing a cart through produce with the careful movements of someone trying not to disturb a sleeping beast. In this case, the tequila headache pulsing behind my eyes. God, when did I become this person? Hungover on a weekday, sneaking around like a teenager? Other early morning shoppers moved around me in their own bubbles of exhaustion. A construction worker grabbing energy drinks, a mum with a toddler already having a meltdown by the bananas, an elderly man meticulously examining every apple like it held the secrets of the universe. We were all refugees from normal shopping hours, driven here by our own particular desperations. My phone screen glowed with Brad's list because, of course, he'd made a list. Not just any list. A colour-coded, sectioned by store layout masterpiece he'd emailed at 5:45 a.m. Produce first, organic only, then dairy, specific, brands highlighted. Meat counter, exact weights, specified, and so on. The subject line read, Harrison retirement, do not deviate. Do not deviate. Like I was a military operative, not a woman buying food for his party. I thought about last night, how my heart had hammered as I'd slipped through the back door at 12:03 a.m. The house had been dark, silent except for Brad snoring from our bedroom. He'd been sprawled across his side of the bed, mouth slightly open, looking almost innocent in sleep. The texts on my phone felt like evidence of a different person entirely. Where are you? You need to be up at 6 to start cooking. Get home. Now. We'll discuss this tomorrow night after the party. Your behaviour has been unacceptable lately. But when I'd slid into bed, he hadn't stirred. This morning he'd left before I woke. No note, no mention of the texts. Just his list arriving like a digital slap while I nursed instant coffee and tried not to vomit. Will he even remember? Or is this another gaslight waiting to happen? I'd stood in the kitchen for 5 full minutes, thumb hovering over the delete button for those texts. It would be so easy. Claim my phone had died. Pretend the whole thing never happened. But that was something Brad would do. Erase evidence, rewrite history, make me question my own memory. I couldn't become him, not even in self-defense. Organic, free-range chicken breasts, £8, I muttered, checking his list against the meat counter options. The prices made me wince. 50 people, 3 courses, and Brad wanted everything to scream, we have money to burn. I did the mental math for the 100th time. Appetizers would take 2 hours minimum. Stuffed mushrooms, prosciutto-wrapped asparagus, his grandmother's blessed deviled eggs that required a prayer circle and perfect timing. Main course, chicken masala with that wine reduction that never quite reduced right. Another 3 hours including prep. Sides, roasted vegetables, wild rice pilaf, that salad with 17 ingredients, and homemade dressing. There aren't enough hours. There literally aren't enough hours in the day. You look like you're planning a military invasion. I jumped, nearly dropping the chicken. Charles from the deli counter stood behind me grinning. He was in his 60s, had worked at Wegmans for decades, and always called me honey, in a way that felt paternal rather than patronising. Close, I said, attempting a smile. Harrison's retirement party. Tonight. 50 guests. His eyebrows shot up. Tonight? What time? 6 o'clock. And you're doing the food yourself? He looked at my cart, already half full with ingredients. All of it. 3 courses, I heard myself say, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. Appetizers, main, sides, dessert. Charles let out a low whistle. 3 courses for 50 by tonight? You training for Iron Chef? Something in his tone, not judgmental, just genuinely amazed at the impossibility of it, made tears prick at my eyes. I blinked them back hard. The caterer cancelled, I lied, the words coming easier than expected. Last-minute emergency. And Brad, my husband, he's counting on this for his firm. Charles studied me for a moment, and I wondered what he saw. A privileged suburban wife playing chef? A woman drowning in expectations? Maybe both. What kind of sides you planning? He asked finally. Roasted vegetables, wild rice, pilaf, Caesar salad? And dessert? Individual tiramisu cups, because apparently I hate myself. He laughed, a warm rumble that made me feel slightly more human. Tell you what, I can help with sides and dessert. Good quality, pass for homemade if you plate them right. My heart stopped. Charles, I couldn't... Honey, I've been making party platters for 30 years. I can do roasted vegetables that'll make your mother-in-law weep. He paused. Though, from what you've mentioned about her over the years, that might not be hard. He remembered. All those little comments I'd made during our brief deli counter conversations. He'd actually listened. Brad's very particular about homemade food, I said carefully, testing the words like walking on ice. And Brad's going to be very particular about having no food if you try to do all this yourself, Charles countered. Look, you focus on your mains and appetizers. I'll handle sides and dessert. My tiramisu's won awards at the county fair 3 years running. This is rebellion. This is breaking the rules. This is... How much? I asked, already mentally reorganizing my timeline. Let me work it up. Come back at 1 sharp. Gives me time to make everything fresh. You'll need serving platters? I have those. Good. 1 o'clock. Don't be late. I'll have everything packaged so you can transfer to your own dishes. He winked. Your secret's safe with me? As he walked back to the deli counter, I stood frozen between the organic chicken and grass-fed beef, feeling like I'd just committed a crime. But underneath the anxiety, something else flickered. Relief, maybe even a tiny spark of victory. Brad wants perfection. He'll get it, just not the way he demanded. I grabbed the chicken, checking it off his sacred list. For the first time in years, I was keeping a secret that wasn't about shame or failure. It was about survival. My phone buzzed. Brad, don't forget the saffron. The real stuff, not that generic garbage. I stared at the text, then deliberately grabbed the store-brand saffron. Another small rebellion. He'd never taste the difference, too busy taking credit for my work to notice details like that. Options. Lena's voice echoed in my head. You always have options. Maybe they were smaller than I'd hoped. Maybe they were just store-brand saffron and secret deli assistants. But they were mine. The house felt like a crime scene, where I was both victim and detective, searching for evidence of Brad's mood. His coffee mug sat in the sink, rinsed but not washed, which meant controlled irritation. His breakfast plate was on the counter, not in the dishwasher. Passive aggression. But no note. No additional texts since the saffron reminder. Is the silence punishment? Or did the Ambien genuinely erase last night? I unloaded grocery bags with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd done this dance too many times. Chicken into the fridge, organised by cooking order, vegetables sorted into prep stations, the kitchen transformed into my war room. Cutting boards stationed like battle plans, knives lined up like soldiers. My hands shook slightly as I started chopping onions for the chicken masala. Not from the onions. From the cocktail of exhaustion, hangover, and anxiety coursing through my system. The knife slipped once, nearly taking off my fingertip. Focus. You've done this before. But never quite like this. Never with Charles's secret assistants waiting at 1 o'clock. The thought sent a little thrill through me. My first real deception that wasn't about hiding suffering, but about making life manageable. I thought about the last firm party I'd handled alone. 20 people, supposedly casual. But I'd cooked for 2 days straight. Brad had found me crying in the pantry an hour before guests arrived, mascara running down my face, burns on both arms from the oven. "Pull yourself together," he'd said, not unkindly, but not concerned either. "They'll be here soon." The devilled eggs had turned out grey. The roast had been dry. Brad's evaluation afterward had been surgical in its precision, each failure catalogued for future reference. But not this time. I checked my phone. 8:47 a.m. No texts. The silence felt louder than screaming. The mushrooms needed cleaning. 50 caps, each one requiring gentle brushing because Brad insisted washing them made them soggy. My fingernails filled with dirt as I worked, the repetitive motion almost meditative. Chop the stems, mix the filling. Stuff each cap with the precision of a surgeon who knew one lopsided mushroom would be noticed, commented on, filed away as evidence of my inadequacy. The house needed attention too. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, adjusting things that were already perfect. Hospital corners on the guest bathroom towels. Brad actually checked these, running his hand along the edges like a drill sergeant. Fresh flowers in the entry vase, stems cut at exactly 45 degrees. The bar area arranged with bottles facing forward, labels perfectly aligned. When did I learn all these rules? When did they become automatic? My phone remained silent. 10:15 a.m. The chicken needed marinating, the asparagus needed trimming, the eggs needed boiling. I moved through each task with practiced precision, my body knowing the motions even as my mind drifted. In the reflection of the microwave door, I caught sight of myself. Hair pulled back in a messy bun, yesterday's mascara smudged under my eyes. Brad's Northwestern t-shirt, the one he'd tried to throw away but I'd rescued, spotted with marinade. "You look like shit," I told my reflection. Also, like someone with a secret. The thought made me smile, just slightly. The serving platters came down from the high shelf. Wedding gifts, mostly, used only for command performances like tonight. The Waterford crystal bowl that Karen had given us, which I wasn't allowed to put in the dishwasher. The silver tray that had been Brad's grandmother's, which required special polish and cloth. Each piece carried its own memory of parties past, failures catalogued, successes that were never quite enough. But tonight, some of these platters would hold Charles's food, disguised as my own. Is this what resistance looks like? Deli counter fraud? 11:30 a.m. Still no texts. The silence was definitely punishment then. Brad never forgot anything. He was letting me stew, wondering when the hammer would fall. The appetizers were prepped, ready for final assembly. The chicken was marinating. The house gleamed like a magazine spread. I'd even remembered to put out the guest towels with the embroidered H for Hart, the ones Karen had given us that I found pretentious, but Brad insisted on displaying. Everything was under control. Almost. My hands had finally stopped shaking, but the exhaustion was hitting hard. Every movement felt like swimming through honey. The tequila aftermath pulsed behind my eyes, demanding water, rest, mercy, none of which were on the schedule. Prep until 12:45. drive to store, back by 1:30. Final cooking, showtime at 6. For the first time in years, it might actually work. 12:45 p.m. Keys in hand, purse on shoulder, mental timeline perfectly calibrated. Charles would have everything ready at 1. I'd be back by 1:30, leaving 4.5 hours for final prep. It would work. It had to work. My phone buzzed just as my hand touched the doorknob. Brad, did you get the Macallan 18 for Harrison? I froze. Macallan 18. Whiskey. The good stuff that cost more than most people's car payments. My stomach dropped as I typed back. Me. You said you were handling drinks. 3 dots appeared immediately. He'd been waiting for this. Brad. I said I'd tell you what we needed. Check your emails from last week. I stood in the foyer, frantically scrolling through my inbox. Nothing. I checked spam, trash, even the promotional folder where his messages sometimes ended up when the universe showed mercy. Nothing about drinks. Nothing about Macallan, anything. Me. I don't see any email about drinks. Brad. Sent, Tuesday. Subject line. Harrison party requirements. Try actually reading your emails. Tuesday. I searched again. Nothing. He hadn't sent it, I was certain, but that didn't matter. In Brad's reality, his version was always true. Brad. Also need champagne, Veuve Clicquot minimum, wine selection, 3 reds, 3 whites, good ones, full, bar mixers. List incoming. The list arrived before I could respond. 23 items, specific brands, specific years for the wine. My hand started shaking again. Me. Brad. The party is in 5 hours. I'm already running behind. Brad. Running behind? It's not even 1 p.m. Me. I have to get the food ready. 50 people, remember? A pause. Then the text that made something crack inside my skull. Brad. How does someone with all day to prepare forget something so simple? This is why I have to manage everything. You had one job, Maggie. The phone was in my hand. Brad's contact photo, that professional headshot where he looked successful and handsome and nothing like the man who dissected my failures with surgical precision, stared back at me. And suddenly, violently, I imagined smashing the phone into his face. Not once, but over and over, the glass cracking against his perfect nose, blood on his white collar. That controlled expression finally breaking into something real, even if that something was pain. I could see it so clearly, feel the impact reverberating up my arm, hear the crunch of cartilage, his shocked gasp, the way he'd stumble backward, hands flying to his face, unable to process that I, meek, subdued, obedient Maggie, had finally fought back. The fantasy was so vivid, so visceral that I could taste copper in my mouth, could feel the satisfaction flooding through me like a drug. Oh God, what is wrong with me? I snapped back to reality, gasping, standing in my perfect foyer with my perfectly manicured life falling apart around me. The phone was intact in my hand. Brad's photo still smiled that corporate smile. No blood, no broken glass. Just me, shaking, horrified at the violence my mind had conjured. This is how it happens, I thought wildly. This is how women end up on true crime podcasts. Another text. Brad. Hello? Are you going to get the drinks or not? Me. Going now. I drove to the liquor store on autopilot, my mind calculating impossible math. 15 minutes to the store, 20 minutes to shop, minimum. 15 minutes to Wegmans for Charles's pickup, 20 minutes home. That put me at 2:15 if everything went perfectly. Which it wouldn't. Premier Liquors was packed because of course it was. I stood in the whiskey aisle staring at bottles that all looked identical, prices that made my eyes water. The Macallan 18 was $400. $400 for one bottle that Harrison would probably have 2 sips of. "Can I help you?" The clerk looked about 12, acne scattered across his cheeks. I consulted Brad's list. "Everything. I need everything." 23 items became 30 because I couldn't remember if Brad preferred Bombay or Hendrick's gin, so I got both. Couldn't recall if the vodka should be Grey Goose or Belvedere, so both went in the cart. The wine selection was a complete guess. I grabbed bottles with elegant labels and French names, hoping the year wouldn't matter to anyone except Brad. The total was $1,847. "Having a party?" the clerk asked cheerfully as he packed bottles into boxes. "A funeral?" I muttered, swiping Brad's credit card. "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss." Haven't lost anything yet, I thought. But the day's still young. 1:42 p.m. I was already late for Charles. The boxes of alcohol barely fit in my car, bottles clinking ominously with every turn. I called the deli from the parking lot. "Charles? It's Maggie. I'm so sorry I'm running late." "No worries, honey. Your order's ready whenever you get here." "You okay? You sound..." "I'm fine." The lie came automatically. "Everything's fine. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Everything was not fine. The timeline was shot. The food would be late. Brad would catalogue every failure. But I'd have alcohol, expensive alcohol, because that's what mattered at a retirement party for a man who already had everything. "It's fine," I told myself, pulling back onto the road. "Everything's fine. I can do this." But even as I repeated the mantra, I knew the truth. I was set up to fail. Had been from the moment Brad decided not to tell me about the drinks. Maybe from the moment I'd said "I do" 7 years ago. The thought should have made me cry. Instead, I felt that violent impulse again, smaller this time, but still there. The urge to destroy something, to make the outside world match the chaos in my head. "Options," Lena's voice whispered. "You always have options." Maybe. But right now, all I had were 23 bottles of premium alcohol and a timeline that had already collapsed. The party was in 4 hours. I was already out of time. 2:30 p.m. The kitchen looked like a bomb had detonated. A very expensive, organic, free-range bomb. Cutting boards covered every surface, vegetable peelings scattered like confetti, and Charles's secretly acquired dishes still in their containers, waiting to be transferred to my serving platters. The chicken masala was only half prepped. The mushroom caps sat unstuffed. The deviled eggs existed only as a carton of hard-boiled potential. $400 worth of alcohol sat in boxes by the door, still needing to be arranged on the bar. 3.5 hours. You can do this. You've done more with less. Except I hadn't. Not really. Not without crying in the pantry or burning something crucial or forgetting an entire course until guests asked about it. I was elbow deep in mushroom filling when I heard it. The garage door. My blood turned to ice water. 5 p.m. He was 30 minutes early. No. Brad's footsteps were measured, deliberate. He was assessing before he even entered, cataloguing failures through the walls. The door from the garage opened with its usual precision. Maggie. Just my name, but weighted with disappointment so heavy it could crush bones. He stood in the doorway of the kitchen, still in his suit, surveying the chaos like a general reviewing a failed battlefield. "You're early," I said stupidly, as if that were the problem. His eyes moved across the scene. The unwashed dishes, the half-prepped food, my hair escaping its bun in frizzled chunks, still wearing his old Northwestern shirt now decorated with sauce stains and failure. I gave you one responsibility, Maggie. His voice was calm, controlled, which was always worse than yelling. One simple task: food for 50 people. The food will be ready, I started. Will it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've spent the day doing... He paused, picked up the receipt from Premier Liquors that I'd stupidly left on the counter. $1,800 worth of shopping that I specifically said I would handle. You didn't... You said you'd tell me what to get. You texted me at 12:45 about the Macallan. There's always an excuse, isn't there? He set down his briefcase with deliberate care. Always someone else's fault. The caterer, the timeline, me. The caterer? I hadn't mentioned any caterer to him, but Charles. I'd told Charles the caterer cancelled. Had someone... I'm doing my best, I said, voice small. Your best. He actually laughed, a sound like ice cracking. Your best has the senior partner's retirement party starting in an hour and nothing ready. An hour? You said 6. I said people would arrive at 6, which means everything needs to be ready by 5:30, which you would know if you'd actually read the email. The email that didn't exist, the one I'd searched for 3 times, but arguing was pointless. In Brad's reality, I was always wrong, always failing, always less than what he deserved. Let me help, he said, moving into the kitchen with the false magnanimity of someone about to make everything worse. And he did. Every movement I made, he corrected. The mushrooms were overfilled. The asparagus was cut too long. The serving platters were wrong. Why was I using the everyday ones instead of the Waterford? That's too much salt. The presentation is sloppy. Are you sure that's cooked through? This looks store-bought. That last one made my heart stop. He was holding one of Charles's containers, the wild rice pilaf I hadn't transferred yet. I tried a new recipe, I stammered. It looks professional. Not a compliment. An accusation. The doorbell rang. 5:42 p.m. Get dressed, Brad hissed. I'll handle the early arrivals. You have 3 minutes. I ran. Actually, ran through our house in sauce-stained clothes and bare feet, taking the stairs 2 at a time. I could hear Brad's voice shifting into its public register. Warm, welcoming, apologetic about his wife who was perfectionist about her cooking. You know how she gets. 3 minutes. I stripped, throwing the stained clothes in the hamper. The black cocktail dress would have to do. It zipped. It was clean. It was appropriately conservative. My hair was hopeless, but I twisted it into something resembling a chignon. Lipstick, mascara, heels. No time for anything else. 2 minutes, 47 seconds. I descended the stairs in my cocktail dress and heels like I hadn't just been crying in the bedroom while jabbing bobby pins into my skull. Senior partner Harrison stood in our foyer with his wife, both holding drinks Brad had managed to prepare. Maggie! Harrison boomed. Brad says you've been cooking all day. Smells incredible. Thank you, I managed, my hostess smile clicking into place like armour. So glad you could come. More arrivals, more smiles, more lies about how relaxed I felt, how everything was under control. I floated between kitchen and living room, a ghost in Givenchy, arranging Charles's food on my platters with hands that somehow stayed steady. The devilled eggs materialised from somewhere deep in my muscle memory. The stuffed mushrooms went into the oven at exactly the right moment. The asparagus wrapped itself in prosciutto through sheer force of will. This is what you do, I told myself, arranging the appetizers with mechanical precision. You save him. You always save him. Charles's sides looked magnificent on my grandmother's serving platters. His tiramisu, transferred to individual crystal cups, could have been photographed for a magazine. Nobody would know, nobody except me. These mushrooms are divine, Harrison's wife gushed, and I smiled, accepting praise for something I'd actually made while standing in my kitchen in heels and a cocktail dress, dying inside. Maggie has such a gift, Brad said, his hand on my lower back, possessive rather than supportive. I'm a lucky man. Lucky. The word tasted like ash, but I smiled wider, laughed at the right moments, refilled drinks, made sure that older partners had seats, complimented wives on dresses I'd never remember. This was my real job. Not the cooking or the hosting, but the performance. The illusion that we were happy, successful, perfect. The smile never wavered, even as my feet screamed in the heels, even as Brad's fingers pressed warning signals into my spine whenever my mask slipped for a second, even as I realized this would be my life forever, unless something changed. Options, I thought desperately, watching Brad hold court. I need options. The party had reached that golden hour where alcohol loosened tongues, and the successful felt compelled to share their success stories. I moved through the crowd like a phantom in my black dress, refilling drinks, replacing appetizers, my smile so rigid it made my cheeks ache. Harrison held court by the fireplace, his retirement gift. A Rolex that cost more than most people's annual salary, gleaming on his wrist. Brad stood beside him, basking in reflected glory, already calculating how this party would elevate his partnership chances. Maggie, come here, Harrison's wife Patricia called out, waving me over with her third glass of Veuve Clicquot. We were just talking about career paths. No, please no, but I went, because that's what I did. I went where I was summoned, smiled when expected, performed my role in Brad's carefully orchestrated life. Jennifer here, Patricia gestured to a younger associate's wife, was just telling us about her promotion at the Tribune. Editor-in-chief at 32. Isn't that marvellous? Jennifer blushed prettily, the kind of woman who'd managed to have both a career and a marriage without sacrificing either. It's been a journey. What about you, Maggie? Brad mentioned you were in advertising. The room's attention shifted to me. I felt Brad's posture change, that subtle straightening that meant danger. I was a copywriter, I said carefully. Before... She was quite good, Brad interjected, his tone suggesting otherwise. Won some local awards. Cute little campaigns for small businesses. Cute. Little. Actually, I heard myself say, the wine making me brave or stupid, I won a Clio. Silence. Harrison's eyebrows raised. A Clio? That's international recognition. For a campaign about domestic violence awareness, I continued, the words tumbling out like prisoners fleeing a burning building. It increased hotline calls by 300%. That's incredible, Jennifer said, genuine admiration in her voice. Why did you leave? Brad's hand found my elbow, fingers pressing just hard enough to hurt. Maggie realised she was better suited to supporting roles, he said smoothly. Some people are meant to shine, others to help them shine. She's much happier now. Aren't you, sweetheart? The room went quiet in that particular way that happens when everyone recognises a cruelty but feels compelled to ignore it. Ice clinked in glasses. Someone cleared their throat. Some people are meant to shine, others to help them shine. I stood there, my award-winning brain reduced to a supporting role in my own life, and something inside me finally, irrevocably, snapped. I need to check the kitchen, I mumbled, fleeing before anyone could see the tears building. Jennifer tried to change the subject behind me, something about the weather, but the damage was done. I'd been publicly diminished, my entire career reduced to a cute little footnote in Brad's success story. The doorbell rang just as I reached the kitchen. Brad was too busy accepting sympathy for having such an emotional wife to answer it, so I went, dabbing at my eyes with the dish towel. A man stood on our porch, and my first thought was that he didn't belong in Rosewood Heights. Jeans instead of khakis. Leather jacket over a button-down. 5 o'clock shadow that wasn't artfully maintained but simply existed. He had the kind of face that had seen things. Tired eyes, a nose that had been broken at least once, the weathered look of someone who dealt with reality, not corporate law. "Detective Ethan Price," he said, showing his badge briefly. "We received a noise complaint." "A noise complaint?" I blinked, confused. "But it's only 8:30. "I know. Normally we'd send a patrol officer, but I live in the area and picked up the call." His eyes moved past me to the party, taking in the scene with professional assessment. "Retirement party?" "Harrison Mills, senior partner at Brad's firm." I stepped aside automatically. "Would you like to come in?" I'm sure Brad would want to apologize for any disturbance. "That's not necessary," he started, but Brad's voice carried from the living room, clear and cutting. "Of course she's emotional. Maggie's always been fragile that way. It's why I handle the important decisions." Detective Price's eyes shifted back to me, and in them I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Recognition. Not of who I was, but of what was happening. He'd probably responded to enough domestic calls to recognize the dynamics, the subtle controlling behavior, the public diminishment. "Actually," he said louder, stepping inside, "I should probably speak with the homeowner." Brad appeared in the hallway, his public face clicking into place. "Officer, I'm so sorry about the noise. We're celebrating a colleague's retirement. I had no idea we were disturbing anyone." "Detective," Ethan corrected mildly. "And you are?" "Bradford Hart. This is my home." He didn't introduce me. I was furniture, apparently. "Mr. Hart." Detective Price pulled out a small notebook, making a show of writing something down. "First complaint at this address?" "Of course." "We're very considerate of our neighbours." Brad's smile was all teeth. "My wife perhaps got a bit enthusiastic with the music earlier. You know how women get at parties. You know how women get." Detective Price's eyes flicked to me again, something unreadable in them. "Actually, in my experience, noise complaints are pretty evenly distributed across genders." Brad's smile tightened. "Of course. I didn't mean—" "I'll need to speak with Mrs. Hart as well," the detective continued. "Standard procedure." "That's really not—" "Mrs. Hart?" He was looking at me directly now, and there was something in his expression, not pity, which I couldn't have borne, but a kind of steady patience. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" Brad started to object, but Harrison called him from the living room. Something about a toast. He couldn't refuse, not without making a scene. His fingers pressed warning into my arm as he passed. 2 minutes, he said quietly. "Don't embarrass me further." When he was gone, Detective Price closed his notebook. "There wasn't really a complaint," he said quietly. "I was driving by, saw you through the window. You looked distressed. I should have been offended, should have been indignant at the intrusion. Instead, I felt seen for the first time in years." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "That's what they all say." He pulled out a business card. in case you ever need to file an actual complaint about anything. Our fingers brushed as I took the card, and I felt something electric, dangerous. Not attraction, not yet, but possibility. The possibility that someone saw through the perfect suburban facade to the woman drowning underneath. "I should go," he said. "Tell your husband to keep it down after 10. "He's not," I started, then stopped. Not what? Not controlling, not cruel, not slowly erasing me from existence. Detective Price waited, but when I didn't finish, he simply nodded. "Take care, Mrs. Hart." "Maggie," I wanted to say. "My name is Maggie, and I used to be somebody." But I just watched him leave, his card burning in my pocket like a secret. The party wound down slowly, painfully. I moved through the motions, clearing plates, refreshing drinks, accepting compliments on food I'd half prepared, while my mind kept circling back to those tired, knowing eyes. "You need an escape plan," Lena's voice echoed. By 10, the last guest had left. Brad stood in the kitchen doorway, his fury barely contained now that the audience was gone. "That was quite a performance," he said softly. "The Clio?" "Really? You had to mention the Clio." "It happened," I won it, 5 years ago, before you understood your place." He moved closer. "We'll discuss this later. After you've cleaned up this disaster." He left me there, surrounded by dirty dishes and the debris of another successful Bradley Hart production. I picked up a knife to wash it, staring at the blade, wondering when I'd started fantasizing about violence instead of escape. My phone buzzed. "Lena, you okay?" My spidey sense is tingling. I looked at the knife, at the party remains, at the life I was supposed to clean up and continue living. Then I typed back, "Me. No, I'm really not." "Lena, on my way." Me. "Brad's here." Lena. "Then meet me tomorrow." "Lunch. We need to talk about those options." Options? I thought about Detective Price's card in my pocket, about Charles's secret help, about the knife in my hand and the violence in my imagination. Maybe Lena was right. Maybe there were options between accepting this and murder. But standing in my perfect kitchen, in my perfect house, with my perfect life in ruins around me, I couldn't see them. All I could see was the knife, and how easy it would be to make everything stop. I had to get out of here. There was no way I could wait until lunch to see Lena.